When I got my results, it did feel like the end of the world. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'll never forget how sad I was. Taking the sadness of that failure, processing it, and then channeling it into better energy. And just, it's a very common experience for Indian teenagers to feel that way because academia is just put on such a pedestal here. And I hope that our system grows to take a more holistic reading of a child instead of it just being a grade sheet.
Welcome to the Curious Corner, where we unravel the stories behind our guests through the lens of curiosity. In today's episode, I'm joined by Kashvi, who is the author of a newsletter, a podcast host, and the community lead at World of Women. Welcome, Kashvi. Thanks for coming on. How are you doing?
GM, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. So excited to be on the Curious Corner.
Great to have you with us. And I can't wait to dive into our conversation more. So I guess for the listeners, it'd be great if you could share a brief snapshot of your childhood and what aspects or experiences do you think shaped you into a person who you are?
Sounds good. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Kashvi. I am the community lead at World of Women, and I'm based out of Mumbai, India. This is where I grew up. This is where I was born, and it is a very big part of who I am today. Speaking of like my childhood and experiences that shaped me, I don't really know where to begin with, but I will say that I am a very family oriented person, and that's something that I've always been ever since I was a kid. I care deeply about people that are around me, regardless of like whether they're friends or family or chosen family. I was raised in a very lively home, I would say. My dad is an extrovert, but my mom is a bit introverted. They kind of balance each other out. And my grandparents also played a very big part in raising me and shaping a lot of my beliefs, especially my grandfather. And I also have an older sister who's always shown me the way. She's in many ways my moral compass because when it comes to like childhood stuff, I feel like my parents put a lot of attention on like making sure that my sister is like, like a good role model for me. And then when it came to raising me, it was like a lot of it was done by my sister herself because my parents were like, okay, we did it with one kid, we're done. And I was still very close to them, but a lot of the stricter side of parenting for me came from my sister, who always showed me right from wrong. I know we're going to dive into pop culture a little bit, but she introduced me to cool stuff about pop culture. I remember the first time she, like, till this date, it's such a clear memory in my head where she opened up YouTube and, like, I didn't know what YouTube was, and she showed me that. So I think a lot of the credit of what my values are today and how I look at things and my perspective, the credit goes to my family. And especially like my sister and my grandfather and my dad. The thing with my dad is like a whole different thing. We're super close, and he's an entrepreneur. He's been running his own business for over 25 years now. And I think Web3 founders could like learn a thing or two from him. But that's that about my childhood.
Amazing. Yeah, as you said, very heavily family orientated person. And I didn't know that your sister was like such a role model, I guess, in your like early childhood.
Yeah, we're very different, but I do look up to her a lot because she has a very strong set of values and moral compass. She's a doctor, so she's super hardworking as well. And she's in Melbourne right now, but we usually live together. We share a room. We're close.
What uh what are some of those values that your sister you feel like is instilled in?
To listen more than you speak. That's something that I learned from my sister, that you've always got to like, hear the other person out. And sometimes when you don't know what to say, it's better to just shut up and like listen and absorb what's happening around you. The other thing is to always do the right thing, even when it's difficult. You have to choose to be on the right side of history. So always like go with what you think is the right thing to do, and be the bigger person when you can. That's like a mix of my dad and my sister, but like they've taught me that it's really important to let go of things when it's time to let go and be the bigger person in every situation.
Love that.
Yeah.
Some great values in there, and definitely, I think we need a lot more of those in the world today. You described one of your lowest moments, I guess, of your childhood when you had bad exam results in 12th grade.
Oh, you remember that?
And I guess growing up, school and education is one of those where society as a whole puts a lot of pressure on us to do
Mm.
well and perform well.
Yeah,
And a lot of kids will go through our experience and either not enjoy school or, they do okay, but they don't get results they wanted. And in the moment, it feels like, um, I don't want to say failure, but, it feels like you
yeah.
haven't done well. So, what impact did that have on you personally? And yeah, how did that shift who you are today?
Yeah. Academically, I'm not the most driven person, but I'm also not too bad either. Like, I'm the type of person who will try to seek a little bit of validation from the grades that I get because I always put in the work. I'm never like, oh, I'm just gonna wing it. I do that in university now, but like your 12th grade exams are taken very seriously here in India where I live. So I put like days and nights into this, and I was very like focused for months on just like trying to get this right. But it was difficult because it was a different course than what I was used to. And I had a lot of like math related fear that really came out like during the exams themselves. And when I got my results, it did feel like the end of the world. I'm not going to lie. Like for a day or two, I was just like, I'm useless, I'm horrible, nothing good is ever going to come out of my life. Like that's the zone that I was in. And my parents were just like, they were also kind of disappointed, but they were just like, you need to see the bigger perspective here, and it's not the end of the world. Especially, luckily for me, my 12th grade results did not influence the university that I got into. For a lot of people, it's a very important metric because based on that, you get admission at a good university here. But I had to give another entrance exam for that university, so I kind of just like redirected all my attention from the day I got those exam results to start preparing for the next test that I had. And I did really well on that test. I cleared, I got into the university of my choice in like the first go. So it was just about like taking that, taking like the sadness of that failure, processing it, and then channeling it into better energy and just putting in the effort and doing it in a more systematic way so that I can like convert this into measurable outcomes, because I think that maybe for my 12th grade boards I might have worked hard but I didn't work as smart. So once I figured that out and I had the right mentors by my side, I tried to channel it into something positive. But I'll never forget how sad I was, when that came out, because it's a very common experience for Indian teenagers to feel that way when it comes to exams, because academia is just put on such a pedestal here, and in some ways it's good, but in a lot of ways it really isn't. And I hope that our system like grows to take a more holistic reading of a child instead of it just being based on a grade sheet. So yeah.
For sure. And yeah, I guess now that you have that moment, like moving forward, if you have like moments of setbacks, then I guess like maybe you always like go back to that and it's like, the things you learn from that and the importance of staying true to yourself and your values and um I think yeah, just not being defined by a piece of
I
paper.
think it's less about values and more about just like working hard and working
For
smart.
sure.
Like you just need to figure out what is it that you want, how are you going to achieve it, and then make like a checklist of things that you have to do, give yourself a deadline of when you have to do them by, and then find the discipline to just do it.
Yeah. Discipline's difficult.
It is. I struggle with it every day. I'm not the best with discipline.
Yeah. I think everyone struggles with that. So I guess from that, if you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be and why?
That's an interesting question. So, something that I wish I knew sooner is I feel like I was a very hyper aware child, to be honest. I've always felt like, and like I have an adult mind in like the brain of a kid. So I've always been super intuitive and aware of what's happening around me. But I would say to maybe put more effort into friendships and relationships. Like I'm super happy with where I'm at right now with my friend circle and could not be more grateful. But I feel like at the time I was a bit different. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Like my mind would just be a lot more focused on work and figuring out what I want to do like for life. Like I was thinking too much about the big things and not cherishing what I have in that moment. So that's definitely something. But I'm making up for it now, and I'm still young, and I have my whole life ahead of me. So I'm trying to, do it all at once right now, and it's working out all right. Oh, one thing I would say is to spend more time with the people that I love, especially like my grandfather. I wish I would have spent more time with him while he was still here.
Yeah, family is very important. You kind of mentioned it towards the end of that, but I don't know. Like you say, you're very young, got your whole life ahead of you, and feels like already you've achieved a lot in a short space of time, and you do a lot of things naturally. Like I know you're like still studying for a degree, but that's finishing soon. You've worked for multiple startups, currently working for one. You make a lot of content online, and just like I guess the general demands of like day to day living. And from what it looks like, it seems like you paint as if you have a very well balanced life, and make sure. I feel like you know the importance of finding time for yourself.
Yeah.
Um, and like from that, I just wonder whether what taught you that lesson, and was there a challenging period in your life where maybe that weren't the case, and therefore now like you have that. So I guess almost what I'm trying to say is, do you feel like there's been a period in your life where you've experienced some form of burnout?
Yeah, I think I was pretty burnt out early 2022. Like
Mm-hmm.
April, March 2022, I wasn't seeing any of my friends. I was just working all day and I was going to uni and I wasn't sleeping and it wasn't a great time, but it was just like that little period of time where I had to put in the work in order to like really get those results. And I don't really have any regrets around it, like zero regrets, because that work yielded me an amazing career highlight, which is the launch of World of Women Galaxy. And I wouldn't change anything that happened for the world, but it was a difficult time in terms of balancing things out. I wouldn't say I'm the best at it, but it's important for me to try to do everything at once. Having said that, though, I do understand that not every aspect of my life can get 100% of my energy all the time. So you have to be mindful and split it up based on what needs priority at the moment. So, for instance, if it's my best friend's 21st birthday and I know that it's an important milestone in her life, I'll probably cancel a podcast recording and be there for her at that birthday, even though that recording meant a lot to me, because that can always be rescheduled. But my best friend's 21st birthday, like that's not going to get rescheduled and that's not happening again. So, in some ways, you have to play this balancing act. But every time you have a period of burnout, it's important to just like acknowledge that, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I need a break. And then during that break, you figure out like, what's really important to me as a person, what is my list of priorities. And prioritizing is something that I used to be bad at, but today it's one of my biggest strengths. So i'm I'm a big fan of just like figuring out what are the things that are most important to you, and then based on that, how much energy and time are you giving to each aspect of your life. I don't want to get like I don't want to go too much into the details of like what it was like when I was burnt out, but it definitely wasn't the best time. But I was lucky to be surrounded by friends and family who were very understanding of long work days and what that meant for me and my career. And they were still here after the period as well when I needed that recovery phase. I wasn't like, it's not like I was borderline depressed or anything. I was just exhausted. But taking time off to bounce back from that exhaustion was a great decision. And I was just fine in time for like the rest of the year and to give my final exams.
Reflecting on that experience, what advice would you give to others who maybe feel like they're struggling with burnout?
Struggling with burnout. Hmm. Yeah, burnout looks different for different people. For some, for someone, it's just like, okay, they can't get themselves out of bed because they physically don't have it in them to work. For some people, burnout is like, I don't care that I don't have the energy, I'm still going to keep working because I have to do it. So I think the most important thing, like if you feel like you're burnt out, is to have two types of conversations. One is an honest conversation with yourself, an internal dialogue to acknowledge that, hey, what am I feeling? What's triggering these feelings, and why am I like it's important for you to ask yourself questions and get to the bottom of what's causing you um the stress, or like, just that queasy feeling you get when you're burnt out. And the second conversation that you need to have is with the people that are around you. So once you figure out what exactly is burning you out, is it your job? Is it your studies? Is it your family situation? Because I know that that's also a thing for a lot of people. It's important to confront what's causing that and speak to the right people around you. For me, I remember like my parents and my best friend would like often have conversations with me like, how are you feeling? Like, we've noticed that you're working a lot, you didn't sleep much, you sent a text message on the family group at 5 a.m., like, what's wrong with you? Like, why weren't you, in bed? So um just surround yourself with the right people who will call you out on your BS when you're going through it, because it's easy to go down that rabbit hole, and you need people that care about you to pull you out of it. And the second thing I would say is that it's not the end of the world. You might feel like you don't know what you love doing anymore. I've been there. But with a little bit of trial and error, you'll start finding your spark back. And it might not be for the same thing, but a different opportunity will come along. But that can only happen if you allow yourself to rest and rejuvenate. I cannot emphasize how important it is to just rest and do nothing. I struggle with it, so I sound like a bit of a hypocrite while saying it. But if you don't give your body and your mind the rest that it needs after a week of like constantly working, um it's going to bite you. It really is, and it did for me, which is why now I prioritize resting and like being away from work a lot in my life than I did before. But yeah, having said that though, like, it's important to work hard, hustle, all that good stuff. Just know when you need to like take a break and take it a little easy.
That makes a ton of sense. And I guess, as you said, for people, like their form of rest is different, right? Some people will go reading, some people will go for walks, sometimes it's just spending time with your loved ones and your family. And really just having that self awareness of what works best for you. And, I think I myself, like, I feel like I'm not very good at just like sitting still and doing nothing. I feel like even if I'm sat still, my mind needs to be doing something. So, yeah, comes down to a lot of self awareness and just figuring it out.
Absolutely, yeah. For like, rest doesn't even have to look as pretty as the things you said. Like, personally, for me, to rest is just to rot in bed for like a day.
Watch movies or
Yeah,
films.
I'll watch like a good rom-com, read a book, and just like literally not move from one position in my bed for hours at a stretch. And like, I'll order food in and like, just have a chill day by myself. So resting can also just like, my friends and I call it rotting. Like, sometimes where we're not in the mood to socialize, but we still want to hang out with each other, we'll just like go to each other's houses and rot in bed together and watch movies or like a YouTube video or just anything that will give the brain a little bit of a break from work related stuff.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I feel like I used to do that a little bit, but yeah, would love to bring those back. How do you feel like your perception of success has shifted since, like, I guess, like since that period in your life, and yeah, like embraced more of a balanced and self-loving lifestyle?
Success to me has always just been to make my parents proud. Like as a kid, I was just like, I want to make a lot of money and I want to make my parents super proud. And I feel like my definition, the money part has definitely changed. I don't think that earning money makes you a super successful person. I think it's important to secure yourself financially, but after a point, success is less about chasing the bag and more about chasing your purpose. And so that has definitely changed from before. And the second part hasn't changed at all. Like everything I do it to make my parents and the people that I love proud of the things that I do. One of my core values is to give more than I take. And as long as I'm doing that, I feel like I'm doing well. Success is subjective. And I have moments where I feel like I'm doing great, but I also have moments where I feel like I'm an absolute failure. So it really switches a bit. Especially when when you're young, you sometimes aren't able to make sense of things in the way that I think other people in our industry are able to. And you can get in your head a little bit and go into like a bit of an overthinking spiral. So I'm not immune to that, which is why my view of whether I'm successful or not keeps changing. But I think the core thing for me is to make the people that I love proud and to give more than I've taken. And as long as I'm doing that, I feel like I'm doing all right.
Love that. Um, yeah, I think everyone's kind of their best and worst critic, right? Like I say, so some moments where you think I'm doing great, and other moments where it's just like it's not going well right now. But
Like
yeah,
right now, I feel great. But in like 4 hours when it's 3 a.m. and I'm sitting here and I'm just like, dude, what did I even do today? Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, that happens. And it's a normal thing. Like, everyone feels like that. So it's just
yeah,
important to bring yourself back in the morning.
finding
Yeah.
balance and not overjudging yourself if you do
Not
have an
over.
off day
Yeah.
um, makes a ton of sense. You mentioned, I guess, at the start of the episode around how it is your sister that introduced you to YouTube, and I know that like your first jobs were kind of around the creator economy and helping to freelance for startups. And as of right now, you're the author of a newsletter. You're in the process of starting your own podcast. You're very active on Spaces and other people's podcasts, and also make your own video content. Like you just make a lot of content, is what I'm trying to get at. So, I guess with that and what you've learned, and like your background being in the creator economy anyway, what advice would you give to someone who's starting their journey now into creating content and trying to build their own personal brand?
Honestly, I think the key is to just start. Like, it's important to plan things out a little bit, figure out what your strategy is, how do you want to be perceived, but really like just find a few core things that make you who you are as a person. Understand what it is that you want to put into the world, like give that some deep thought, write it down. I'm a very big proponent of writing things down and use this as your source of truth to create content, because content stems out of like what you see on the screen as the end result was first an idea in your head. So when you do get those ideas in your head, it's important that you put it to paper or put it in your notes app or save it somewhere. And then when you actually get to the execution part of it, try to create something as close to the idea as possible. You might not get the perfect outcome, but you will get something that's pretty close. And when you have that, just hit post. Like, don't overthink it. Make sure that you're contextualizing your content to the platform that you're producing on and just put it out there into the universe. It's important that every time you post a piece of content, you engage with others as well because you want them to come to your profile and discover you. So there's like some technical stuff around that, like use the right hashtags, make sure you're posting at like similar times every day. If you're a daily creator, if not, then like that's a whole other thing. But to begin with, it's just important that you know what you're talking about and you've like done your research and you're also passionate about it. Because if you're talking about something just because it's going to go viral, like it might work for you for like a short period of time, but long term it's not sustainable. So you really need to find out what is it that you want to talk about, what is it that the world needs, and what is something that can actually help you sustain this in the long run. And then find something at the center of it all. Ideate like what the final thing is going to look like, put it to paper, and then produce it and then post it.
100%. Made me think about how, in like a previous episode, how we were talking also around content. And I think what you're getting at now is like the importance of finding your why behind it in the first place.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, people will start something like you say because they want to go viral or maybe they want to like monetize it and make money from it. But like you can get lucky and go viral and be a success overnight, but for the vast majority of creators, like 99.9%, that's just not how it happens. And it is a case of being consistent and, like I say, continuing to provide value to your audience. And if you don't have a why behind doing it in the first place, then you're never going to get to a point where you quote unquote make it because you're going to burn out or you're going to lose enjoyment and it's not going to be fun anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you might make it. I've seen creators who've like, faked it till they made it and all of that. It's just at the end of the day, it's about what you're comfortable with having on your conscience,
Mm-hmm.
um, and whether you're able to live with it or not. So just do things that speak to your soul and that you know you can sustain long term.
I saw that last year Goldman Sachs posted an article saying that they were predicting by 2027 that creator economy would be valued at $500 billion. Um, and there's a whole stat of like how the number one job that kids want to be is a YouTuber. And I guess there's this realization that we can now make a living by making content online. Knowing that, like, what values do you think is important to stick by for someone that's making content?
Well, firstly, with all this stuff being thrown out around the creator economy and all these big numbers, I think the number one thing to remember is that it's not always about the money. You don't make content because you're going to get paid for it. You make content because you have a story inside you that you're dying to tell. And there's people out there that want to listen to it. There's people out there that are going to learn from it. And there's people out there that are going to discover you and really like you for who you are for it. You don't necessarily need to be doing things that all the other creators out there are doing. You don't need to be, you know, following, like jumping on every trending audio or every trend that's out there. You need to stay true to who you are and put in the work to create quality stuff, quantity or quality, whatever your focus is at the moment, and just put that out into the world and follow the right strategies. You don't have to change who you are, to or be like a certain way or fit. You don't have to fit into a template in order to make it. There's different ways of making it as a creator. And I think that if you're just doing it for the money, it might work for a little bit, but then after that, like, it's you're not going to want to do it anymore, or people are going to be able to see through your act and brands are not going to want to work with you. So just whatever you do, stay authentic and stay true to who you are and the things that you're passionate about, because people are smart, like audiences and communities can tell when you're not doing something that you don't like doing. So I would just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think I completely agree that authenticity and staying true to yourself is kind of number one, and don't worry about what everyone else is doing because, like, that's just not it's not a good use of your time, right? As the creator economy continues to grow and we see the emergence of new technologies. Obviously, like AI is pretty hot right now and has been for a while. But how do you see the relationship between creators and their fans evolving?
Creators and their fans. So I think fans are like fandom has always been like ever since the internet came into the picture and we discovered that hey, we can meet people online and we can like build all these connections globally. We started to realize that there's a cultural shift that's happening here, and we see new variations of that cultural shift every few years. So it happened with NFTs, it's now happening with AI. And through all of this, the way celebrities and influencers interact with their fans also changes drastically. Like, I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago, like radio was the thing. Like a celebrity would come on like a radio show and their fans would call in to get a chance to talk to them and ask them a question. That evolved into like, okay, sending emails or, like there's different ways for it to happen. But I think that in today's day and age, it's important to build relationships with your fans as if they're your friends. I feel like Gen Z, especially, we don't like to put people on pedestals. We like to see them as regular human beings that go through the same like journey as us on a day to day basis. So I think these relationships between fans and creators are becoming a lot more personal. People appreciate authenticity and honesty more in today's day and age. So the kind of communities that that's also a big change, by the way, that creators care more about building communities now versus getting like a million followers. It's the whole thousand true fans theory where you'd rather have thousand people that would essentially help you sustain your lifestyle and ensure that you're able to monetize your content versus like a million people that are just going to look at you on Instagram and then instantly scroll past it to the next thing, which you cannot blame them for because this is sort of the attention economy and money flows where attention goes. But I think like creators now focus more on building super fans who are willing to like, put their money where the mouth is and really sustain like the vehicle that they're trying to create through their content.
Yeah, and I think also, I'm sure you're seeing this as well. There's a lot of now with AI, like you get all these like overlays and like special effects, and it gets to a point where like it's just noise. And to your point, like the content that almost performs better is ones where it is a case of like someone's like live streaming and they're just like going around their day to day business, and but it feels like more intimate, and it's like
Yeah.
you're like having a step inside their life versus like all these like fancy effects and like the
Yeah,
high quality stuff. Like people just want to feel like
I
say closer
agree.
to their creator, and yeah, at the end of the day, it is a case of that relationship versus like storytelling, why people consume the content in the first place. So
I agree. And this is one of the reasons why I feel like we all know Emma Chamberlain. And like, this is what she does in her content. Like, her podcast is her sitting in her bed like this with like a mic and just talking about her day. Like, that's all she does. But she's so honest about it. She's so authentic. And she's so vocal about her thoughts that her fans naturally gravitate towards it. And she has this thing where she's always got like an iced coffee around her. So she ended up launching her own brand called Chamberlain Coffee. She sells different types of roasts. She also sells physical tumblers now, but it's doing really well. And I love this era where content creators are launching consumer packaged goods. It's super interesting. It doesn't work in every country because it really depends on the spending power of your audience. But for the type of community that Emma has, I think it was like a genius move.
yeah, as you said, like we've seen that more in the past couple of years, and I think it's only going to continue to grow. So
Yeah, yeah,
um, yeah, excited to see what happens in that space and how it continues to evolve.
for sure. Absolutely. It's exciting.
It is very exciting, and
Mhm.
yeah, I think with all the technology that's coming, that there's going to be a lot of changes in the next coming years, and we are part of that generation that gets to live it, and um, it's a very exciting time. I want to get on to one of the topics that I know you're a big fan of, and you said at the start of the podcast that it was your sister that introduced you to pop culture. So, as someone that spends a lot of time, I guess, in pop culture, what can we learn from pop culture?
Well, there's plenty of things to learn from pop culture. I would say that my sister introduced me to like, okay, the internet, and then I was almost like thrown into it and obsessed with everything online. I feel like I'm one of those people who's just like social chronically online on different social apps. I'm trying to see like what's trending, what's happening, what's something to follow, what's something to like keep up with, implement in our own work. So there's a lot of positives and negatives to following pop culture, but I think one of the things that to like learn from it is to like just have fun and like do your own thing and enjoy the moment that you're in, because that's the kind of vibe that pop culture encourages you to do. I guess that the cool thing about pop culture is that it starts a lot of important conversations in society. So another thing to learn is to like learn to watch and consume something, but then also add your own layer of thoughts on it and like read other people's opinions and try to understand how the human mind works, because pop culture often is an indicator of what's happening in society. And then when it's created, it starts further conversations on those topics within society. So it's important that we engage in that dialogue and build on ideas that other people have created to wave our own tapestry of something that's new and our own. So that's I hope that answered your question. I don't know if it did, but it's how I look at pop culture.
Yeah, no, I love that. And as you said, a lot of societal issues get addressed first in pop culture, and then it kind of makes its way um, over time.
Yeah, I think
And as you said, it's kind of like I think you kind of mentioned this earlier, but always listening to what's happening around you. And pop culture is obviously massive, and just paying attention to what's happening, because ultimately that will then have a ripple effect on the rest of society and the world. Whether
exactly.
it's yeah, whether it is.
Exactly. It's great to know. Like a lot of people try to stay in their own shell, which I think is also all right. Like it depends on what you're doing. But I think that like just mainstream media and pop cultures are such a great way to like have important conversations with the people you love, or just like change the way you think about things to broaden your own perspective and your mind. Like it's fantastic and it's fun, which I think is a key element. Like it's fun. Like majority of culture is just like, especially like pop culture is just about like having a good time and doing cool things. So I love that.
I love it too, and yeah, I always feel like I'm going down like a new rabbit hole and learning something new. So
Yeah, like it's fun.
definitely keeps you on your toes. And I guess in a world where pop culture is like constantly evolving, how do you navigate and like stay relevant when pop culture is just like constantly changing?
I think it depends on what your goal is and relevancy. Like what are you trying to keep relevant? Like are you trying to keep your brand relevant? Are you trying to keep your personal brand relevant? Like what's the it depends really on your situation, because I have this whole thing about like how being relevant is not as important as people think. As like a person, you don't always have to be relevant. Like it's fine if you just want to live your life with the people you love and just keep it to that. But if you're a creator and you want to find ways to always be relevant, it's important to follow trends, to share your thoughts on these trends, to do things in your way, add a personal twist to it, put it out into the world, and then also engage with other people that are partaking in similar content as you, because you want to grow together, you want to collaborate as much as possible, and you want to be the ones that are starting conversations. So ask questions, provide CTAs and everything that you create, engage with the people that engage with you, go above and beyond to, put yourself out there, and know that it's okay if you're not relevant sometimes. Like, it's fine. Like, it's not the end of the world if no one knows who you are, as long as you have a few people that love you and you love. Um and yeah.
Yeah, I think, as you said, there's not. I don't want to describe it as a trap because I think I might be wrong, but what you're saying around trying to remain relevant and how sometimes like it takes up a lot of time and energy sometimes, and it all comes back to like self-awareness, right? If you want to try remain on top of pop culture, then great, and there's certain things you can do to stay on top of that, and if not, as you said, that's also completely fine, and it's just figuring out. Yeah,
Couldn't care less if Drake or Taylor Swift had dropped a new album. But I also know people for whom it's like the thing, like the most important news in the world when that comes out. So it's fine depending on what side of the spectrum you're on.
amazing. Thank you, Kashvi, so much for coming on today. Very much appreciate it, and thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. If anyone listening wants to follow Kashvi, then you can find her on Kashvi Eth on Twitter /X and Kashvi.eth on IG. Also, if you want to get closer and I guess have the insights from Kashvi on a more regular basis, then Kashvi has her own newsletter and is soon to be starting her own podcast. So links for those will be in the description. So yeah, much love. Thanks for coming on.
Ben, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to see this podcast grow. I feel like Curious Corner is such a good name. I love that you're doing this and bringing people on. Thank you for having me and for all those questions. I had an awesome time as well. And if you're listening to this and you want to connect with me, go to the links in the description and find me and say hi. I'm from the Curious Corner, and I'll know who you are.
Amazing. All right, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure to follow us, to leave a review, and to connect with us on our socials.